You think a woman with no friends is a walking red flag, a warning sign flashing danger, instability, toxicity? But what if I told you she might be the most emotionally intelligent, self-aware, grounded person you'll ever meet? And the only reason you can't see it is because you've been programmed to confuse social performance with emotional maturity. Here's what's really happening. You've been sold a lie. A lie that says a woman's worth is measured by how many people show up to her birthday, how full her group chat is, how often she's tagged in photos, how busy her social calendar looks. You've been conditioned to believe that isolation equals dysfunction and that a packed social life equals stability. And because of that conditioning, you're walking past women who could transform your entire existence while chasing superficial validation, dressed up as connection. If that just landed differently than you expected, hit subscribe right now, not because I need the numbers, but because you need the reminders. You need the truth. You need someone to keep calling you higher when the world keeps pulling you back into comfort and mediocrity. This channel exists to dismantle the narratives that keep you stuck, settling, and chasing the wrong things. Let's unpack the misconception first. Society has taught you that a woman surrounded by friends is socially vetted, emotionally healthy, desirable, safe. She's got the stamp of approval. She's been endorsed by her peer group. She fits in. She belongs. And belonging, in your mind, equals value. But here's the fallacy buried in that logic. You're assuming that popularity and emotional health are the same thing. You're assuming that quantity of relationships equals quality of character. You're assuming that because someone can maintain a social circle, they must be well adjusted. But let me ask you this. How many people do you know who are surrounded by friends and still emotionally empty? How many people do you know who are always at the party but never truly present? How many people do you know who have 100 contacts in their phone and no one they can actually talk to? Now, flip it. A woman with no friends. She's sitting alone on a Friday night. Her phone isn't blowing up. She's not getting invited to brunches or girls' trips or group hangs. And your first instinct is to ask, what's wrong with her? You assume she's difficult. You assume she burned bridges. You assume she's the common denominator in every failed friendship. You assume she's antisocial, cold, damaged, or worse. Dangerous. That's the script you've been handed. That's the lens you've been given. And it's wrong, dead wrong. Because what if she didn't lose her friends? What if she outgrew them? What if she walked away? What if she chose solitude over compromise? What if she valued her peace more than she valued being liked? Here's the hard truth most men will never admit. The woman with no friends didn't fail at relationships. She succeeded at boundaries. She didn't lose people because she's toxic. She lost people because she refused to stay small, fake, complicit, or convenient. She stopped performing. She stopped pretending shallow conversations were deep connection. She stopped laughing at jokes that weren't funny. She stopped attending events that drained her. She stopped texting back just to keep the peace. She stopped showing up for people who only wanted her energy, not her truth. And when she stopped, they left. And she let them. That's not a red flag. That's self-respect with a spine. Let me tell you what maintaining friendships actually costs, especially for women. It costs emotional labor, constant check-ins, constant reassurance, constant management of group dynamics and social hierarchies. It costs code switching, being one version of yourself with this friend, another version with that group, a third version to keep everyone comfortable. It costs silence, biting your tongue when someone says something that doesn't sit right because you don't want to rock the boat. It costs energy, showing up even when you're empty, performing even when you're exhausted, smiling even when you're screaming inside. It costs authenticity, hiding the parts of yourself that don't fit the mold, dimming your light so others don't feel overshadowed, shrinking so the group can stay cohesive. And for what? For the illusion of belonging, for the comfort of not being alone, for the validation that comes from being needed. The woman with no friends looked at that cost and said no. She looked at the trade-off and walked away. And that decision, that one decision to choose herself over acceptance, is what separates her from 90% of the population. Because most people would rather be surrounded by shallow connections than face themselves in silence. Most people would rather perform than be real. Most people would rather be liked than be free. But not her. She chose freedom. She chose truth. She chose herself. And if you can't recognize that as strength, you're still operating from a place of fear. Let's go deeper. Why does a woman end up with no friends? Let's trace the root cause. It starts with awareness. She wakes up. Maybe it's a betrayal. Maybe it's exhaustion. Maybe it's a moment of clarity where she realizes she's been performing her entire life and she doesn't even know who she is anymore. Something shifts. And once that shift happens, she starts seeing her relationships differently. She starts noticing the transactional nature of her friendships. She starts recognizing the emotional vampires, the takers, the people who only call when they need something. She starts feeling the weight of one-sided effort. She starts questioning why she's the one always initiating, always planning, always showing up. She starts realizing that most of her friendships are built on convenience, proximity, or shared history, not actual alignment, respect, or depth. And then she faces a choice. She can keep pretending. She can keep playing the role. She can keep investing in relationships that don't feed her. Or she can step back. She can set boundaries. She can stop overextending. She can stop being available to people who aren't truly present for her. And when she makes that choice, the friendships start falling away. Not because she's pushing people out, but because most relationships can't survive honesty. Most friendships are held together by performance, and the moment you stop performing, they dissolve. She didn't end those friendships. She just stopped holding them together by herself. And when she let go, they fell. That's not her failure. That's revelation. Now, here's what that costs her in the eyes of the world. She gets labeled cold, selfish, antisocial, too picky, too intense, too much, not enough. She gets judged by people who've never had the courage to sit in their own silence. She gets questioned by people who are still addicted to external validation. She gets misunderstood by people who can't fathom choosing solitude over shallow connection. And she absorbs that judgment. She internalizes it. She starts wondering if maybe they're right. Maybe something is wrong with her. Maybe she is too difficult. Maybe she should just lower her standards, go back to the group, play the game, fit in. But every time she considers it, something in her recoils. Because she's tasted freedom, she's tasted authenticity, she's tasted what it feels like to not have to perform. And she can't unsee it. She can't go back. She won't go back. So what does she do instead? She builds a relationship with herself. She learns to sit in silence without spiraling. She learns to be alone without feeling lonely. She learns to trust her own judgment instead of outsourcing it to a group consensus. She learns to regulate her own emotions instead of depending on others to validate them. She learns to find peace in her own presence. And in that process, she becomes whole. Not perfect, not without wounds, but whole. Integrated, self-sufficient. And that wholeness is what intimidates people, because a woman who doesn't need external validation won't tolerate your inconsistency. A woman who's comfortable alone won't cling to a mediocre relationship out of fear. A woman who's done the inner work will see through your performance, your masks, your games. And that's what you're really afraid of. Not that she's broken, but that she'll see you clearly. And you're not sure you're ready to be seen. Let's talk about what this means for you. If you meet a woman with no friends, your first instinct will be suspicion. You'll look for the flaw, you'll search for the proof that she's the problem, you'll ask her why she doesn't have friends, and you'll listen for the answer that confirms your bias. But here's what you should be asking instead. What did she protect by walking away? What did she refuse to compromise? What standard did she hold that others couldn't meet? What part of herself did she reclaim by choosing solitude? Those are the questions that reveal character. Those are the questions that separate shallow judgment from real discernment. And if you're honest, you'll realize the issue isn't her. It's you. It's your belief system. It's your programming. You've been taught to see popularity as proof of value. You've been taught to see social performance as evidence of emotional health. You've been taught to equate likability with worth. And because of that teaching, you're blind to depth. You're blind to authenticity. You're blind to the woman who's sitting right in front of you, whole and grounded and real, because you're too busy scanning for external validation signals that mean nothing. Here's the reframe. A woman with no friends isn't missing something. She's protected something. She's protected her energy. She's protected her peace. She's protected her boundaries. She's protected her truth. And instead of seeing that as a deficit, you should see it as a green light. Because the woman who's willing to be alone is the woman who won't settle. She won't stay in a relationship that disrespects her. She won't tolerate half effort. She won't perform for your approval. She won't shrink to make you comfortable. She won't fake chemistry that isn't there. She won't lie to keep the peace. She'll challenge you. She'll call you on your excuses. She'll reflect back the parts of yourself you've been avoiding. And if you're ready for that, if you've done your own work, if you're not running from yourself, if you're ready to meet someone real, she'll be the most loyal, grounded, present, honest connection you've ever experienced. But let's be clear, she's not for everyone. She's not for the man who needs constant reassurance. She's not for the man who measures his worth by how many people validate him. She's not for the man who's still performing, still hiding, still pretending. She's not for the man who's intimidated by independence or mistakes self-sufficiency for coldness. She's not for the man who wants a woman to complete him, fix him, or fill the void he refuses to face. She's for the man who's done his work. The man who sat in his own silence and didn't run. The man who's faced his shadows and didn't flinch. The man who's built a relationship with himself and knows the difference between loneliness and solitude. The man who doesn't need a woman but chooses one. The man who understands that real connection isn't about filling gaps. It's about two whole people building something greater than themselves. Let me paint you a picture of that man. He walks into a room and he doesn't scan for validation. He's not checking to see who notices him, who likes him, who's impressed by him. He's grounded, he's present, he's comfortable in his own skin. He doesn't need noise to feel alive. He doesn't need a crowd to feel significant. He's done the work to know who he is, what he values, what he stands for. And because of that, he doesn't judge a woman by how many people surround her. He judges her by how she shows up in the space between them. Is she present? Is she honest? Does she hold boundaries without cruelty? Does she show care without performance? Does she bring depth, not drama? That's what he's looking for. That's what he values. And when he finds a woman who's done the same inner work, who's chosen herself over acceptance, who's walked through fire and come out refined, he doesn't run. He doesn't question. He doesn't test. He leans in. This man doesn't need her to be popular. He doesn't need her to be liked by everyone. He doesn't need her to perform or prove or shrink. He needs her to be real, and he meets that realness with his own. He doesn't bring shallow energy to a woman who's done deep work. He doesn't expect her to laugh at surface-level jokes or entertain small talk that leads nowhere. He doesn't try to drag her into social circles to validate himself. He respects her solitude. He honors her boundaries. He understands that her independence isn't rejection, it's foundation. He knows the difference between a woman who needs him and a woman who chooses him. And he knows the second option is rarer, deeper, and worth every ounce of effort. So, what do you do if you meet her? First, check yourself. Sit down and ask why her lack of a social circle bothers you. Is it because you genuinely see a character flaw, or is it because you've been programmed to see popularity as proof of value? Is it because you're concerned about her, or is it because you're insecure about what it says about you if you're with someone who doesn't have external validation? Be brutally honest. If the answer is the second one, that's your work, not hers. That's your conditioning, that's your fear, and until you address it, you're not ready for her. Second, stop testing her through a social lens. Don't judge her by how many people show up for her. Don't measure her worth by her Instagram followers or her group chat activity or how often she's out with friends. Judge her by how she shows up for you. Does she listen when you talk, or is she just waiting for her turn? Does she show care through action, not just words? Does she hold space for your truth without trying to fix you? Does she challenge you to grow without tearing you down? Does she respect your boundaries while holding her own? That's what matters. That's where character lives. Not in how many people validate her, but in how she moves through the world when no one's watching. Third, match her depth. Don't bring surface energy to a woman who's done deep work. Don't show up inconsistent, half-present, distracted, performative. Don't expect her to settle for breadcrumbs. Don't expect her to chase you. Don't expect her to perform for your attention. She's past that. She's been through the fire. She's done the work. She knows what real connection looks like. And she won't accept anything less. So if you want access to her world, earn it. Show up consistent. Show up present. Show up real. Bring substance. Bring intention. Bring honesty. And if you can't do that, step aside. Because she'd rather be alone than settle for less than she deserves. Fourth, understand what you're actually signing up for. A woman with no friends will not tolerate your excuses. She will not enable your avoidance. She will not play therapist while you refuse to do your own work. She will not mother you, fix you, or save you. She will not perform emotional labor to keep you comfortable. She will not shrink so you can feel big. She will not dim her light so you don't feel inadequate. She will see you fully, and she will expect you to see her the same way. She will expect effort. She will expect honesty. She will expect growth. She will expect you to show up as a whole person, not a project. And if that sounds intimidating, good, it should, because real connection is not comfortable. Real connection is not easy. Real connection requires you to be more than you've been. And if you're not ready for that, you're not ready for her. But here's what you gain if you are ready. You gain a partner who's not performing. You gain a woman who's not hiding. You gain someone who's done the work to know herself and won't lose herself in you. You gain loyalty that's not born from fear or dependence, but from choice. You gain honesty that cuts through the noise. You gain presence that doesn't waver. You gain depth that doesn't run dry. You gain a woman who will challenge you, call you higher, hold you accountable, and love you without losing herself. You gain a mirror that reflects your truth, not your ego. You gain a foundation, not a fantasy. And if you're smart, you'll recognize that as the rarest gift you could ever receive. Let's go even deeper. Let's talk about what it costs to reject her, because every time you walk past a woman like this, every time you dismiss her because she doesn't fit the mold, because she doesn't have the social proof, because she makes you uncomfortable, you're choosing comfort over growth. You're choosing the familiar over the transformative. You're choosing validation over truth. And that choice has consequences. You end up with women who perform but never reveal. You end up with relationships that look good on the surface but feel hollow underneath. You end up cycling through the same patterns, wondering why nothing ever feels real, why no one ever really gets you, why you're always searching for something more. And the answer is simple. You're choosing the wrong lens. You're valuing the wrong things. You're afraid of the very depth you claim to want. So here's the call. Stop running from depth. Stop hiding behind social proof. Stop using popularity as a proxy for character. Stop judging women by how many people validate them and start judging them by how they validate themselves. Stop looking for someone to complete you and start looking for someone who's already complete. Stop fearing independence and start respecting it. Stop mistaking solitude for loneliness. Stop mistaking boundaries for coldness. Stop mistaking self-respect for arrogance. And start recognizing that the woman with no friends might be the woman who's done the hardest work of all, the work of choosing herself. You are not a victim of your programming. You are not stuck in the narratives you inherited. You have the capacity to question, to unlearn, to see differently. You have the capacity to recognize strength even when it doesn't look like what you expected. You have the capacity to value depth over performance, truth over comfort, substance over appearance. You have the capacity to be the man who doesn't need external validation to recognize real worth. And when you step into that capacity, everything changes. The women you're attracted to change. The relationships you build change. The life you create changes. Because you're no longer chasing what everyone else says you should want. You're choosing what actually aligns with who you are. And here's the final truth that ties it all together. You are the answer. Not her. Not the next relationship. Not the next connection. You. You are the one who has to do the work. You are the one who has to face the conditioning. You are the one who has to sit in your own silence and stop running. You are the one who has to build a relationship with yourself so solid that external validation becomes irrelevant. You are the one who has to choose depth over comfort, truth over performance, growth over stagnation. And when you do that work, when you really do it, you won't need to question whether a woman with no friends is a red flag. You'll recognize her for what she is, a mirror, a reflection of the work you've done or haven't done, a test of whether you're ready for real or still chasing fantasy, a reminder that the best connections aren't built on popularity. They're built on presence, honesty, respect, and the courage to be whole. If this hit you where it needed to, if this challenged something you didn't know you believed, if this made you question the lens you've been using, subscribe. Because this channel doesn't sugarcoat, it doesn't pander, it doesn't tell you what's comfortable, it tells you what's true, it tells you what you need to hear so you stop repeating the same cycles and start building the life you actually want. You're not here by accident, you're here because some part of you knows you're ready for more. You're ready for truth, you're ready to grow, and we're just getting started. This is your community, these are your people. Welcome home.